So thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Veronica, aka the Millennial Empath on Instagram. And today, this class is called How to Protect Your Energy. And this is for empaths, lightworkers, sensitive people who are sensitive to energy specifically. So, Melissa, I wanted to know if you would be willing to share any knowledge you have about energetic practices, or if you want to just put that in the chat, that's fine as well. I am curious to know if you know anything or like what your understanding of this is.
I feel like I definitely know things.
Mhm.
I might be blanking out on the spot, but I've definitely like practiced meditation. I haven't done it too much, but I've done like a little bit of cord cutting, affirmations,
Mhm.
just more around like maybe like mindset. Like protecting my energy through that, or like moving the energy through my body through yoga and tapping. So like that's kind of the energy work I've done. And I've had like Reiki done on me and channeling and things like that.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, so the reason why I ask is I feel like when we get to share like our experiences with this, the more people are kind of exposed to like different practices that they can also try out for themselves. So I just want to give a little story about how I learned about protecting my energy. I was probably in my early 20s when I realized that I was sensitive to energy, that I was an empath, and I fought that tooth and nail for most of my life up until that point. And then when I finally accepted it, it was a big relief. And then it was like, okay, how am I going to take care of myself? Because now that I know this, I was so used to like really just throwing myself into situations thinking that I could handle it, and I would be able to handle it to an extent, but then I would crash in the form of like panic attacks and having high anxiety levels, sometimes going into like really depressive states. Well, when I say depressive states, it wasn't anything like too serious, thankfully. It was just, it didn't feel great. I would crash and burn emotionally, essentially. So I wanted to start with this concept that being sensitive does not make you weak, and it does not mean that you're weak-minded. It's actually the source of your strength and power, because I look at sensitivity as really being connected to your intuition. And when you start to learn how to listen and honor that part of you, the more that trust between you and your intuition grows, and trust will reverberate out into different aspects of your life. So this is a really important concept that I like to tell people, because I don't know about anyone else, but I definitely grew up with the belief that that I was too sensitive to things, and that was wrong. So I'm going to suggest some practices in this class that you can do for yourself. Some of them may resonate with you, some of them may not. It depends on where you're at in your journey and what feels right to you. I would just really encourage you to go ahead and do that, and also do your own research. Listen to other healers, listen to other teachers. Really take time to like absorb information and discern what works for you and what doesn't, according to what feels good to you in your body. So the best way to protect your energy is to honor your gut response / intuition, as I was saying earlier, by listening to what feels right or off to you. In this way, you can better maneuver / pivot your self-care needs and give yourself the rest that you deserve. For me, I tend to feel like resting is probably one of the best ways that you can protect your energy, because I kind of liken it to like the saying that I've heard in like nutrition / wellness, the nutrition / wellness field, where prevention is like the ultimate form of protection, because you're really taking care of your body from a nutritional standpoint. And so from an energetic standpoint, it's like making sure that you get, enough hours when you sleep, making sure that you're taking good care of your body, making sure that your mindset is in a really good place, like Melissa was just explaining. Okay, so let's jump into the practices now. So the first practice that I have that I encourage people who may just start realizing how sensitive they are, and this is a little bit more, I guess, like not I guess, this is more of a visualization practice, is called shielding. So shielding is probably the most common form of protection you'll hear in the spiritual community, in the in energy work fields or practitioners. Um, so shields, you basically visualize different colors, preferably like one color, just completely covering your entire body. You can visualize it in the form of a bubble, in the form of like just like light coming like down from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet. And their strength, as I understand it, the strength of the shield kind of depends on the color. So the more the color has that spiritual protection vibration attached or associated with it, the stronger the shield is. So royal blue is a really good color to shield yourself with. That tends to be the color aligned with Archangel Michael, who is the ultimate angel protector. That is my go-to angel. I freaking love him. He helped me out when I was going through a lot of anxiety issues in my early 20s and late teens. And ultimately, I believe he helped me to survive through a lot of crazy, just mental stuff that was going on with me at the time. Gold light is also a very powerful light that you can visualize yourself being covered in. And these shields tend to be probably more popular because when you shield yourself, you also want to infuse this intention with, I'm shielding myself from anything that does not serve my highest and greatest good. But for opportunities and people that do serve my highest and greatest good, they can come in and I can, it's fine. I can handle it. That I say that because sometimes, from what I understand in terms of shielding, if you really shield to the point where it's like you're really covering yourself with a lot of like the light and this intentions of really keeping away stuff that just that you wouldn't be able to handle, it sometimes also blocks, quote unquote, the I wouldn't say your blessing, but it blocks a lot. And sometimes not everything has to be like super supremely secure, unless you feel like that would really help you out, then by all means go nuts. So if you really want to strengthen your shield, I learned this from Dr. Rosales Meza on Instagram. You can visualize this light coming from the heavens down over your entire body. Just kind of like if you've ever seen like a photocopier machine, and as the light is like scanning the page, that's kind of like the visual that I use. So you can just visualize this light coming down a few times, and when you feel like you've been covered enough, you can just stop and you can infuse your intention in the shielding process. So like I was saying before, may everything that's for me be allowed to come through, and anything that is not, may it be, may it stay away. So you can do that as many times as you feel secure. The second suggestion that I have is actually using the power of prayer. So my ex-boyfriend was a medium, a clairvoyant medium, and he would tell me that the most powerful thing that you could do if you ever get scared of, ugly spirits, is to actually pray. Because when you pray, it like shifts your vibration. You're connecting with this source energy that's greater than you, that you're always connected to 24/7. So when you pray, it's like an act of surrender to something higher than yourself. And you can pray to God, Goddess, Spirit, whatever it is that you call your higher power. You can also call in, your guides, any divine beings that you associate or resonate with, like angels or maybe animal guides. You can also ask, your ancestors to come in and help you out. I've been doing that a lot as of late, and it's really incredible when you start to really create this relationship with your team. And not saying necessarily that you have to pray to your guides or anything like that, or angels, although you certainly can. I personally prefer to pray to a higher power because that's how I was raised. I definitely feel the more that you call upon your spirit team, the more of a relationship you'll develop with them, and they will also help you, remind you like, hey, like maybe you should probably take it, slow it down a little bit, or like, you don't have exactly like the green light to do like X, Y, and Z here. So maybe just go like take a break because, we're kind of feeling like you need that. Okay. So there's also a prayer that there are prayers called Change Me prayers that I learned from the author Tosha Silver. And she has, I think it was her first book. I don't know how many books she's published at this point, but her first book was, I think, Dear Divine Beloved was the name of it. In that book, she has a bunch of prayers called Change Me prayers. And so they go something like this. It's really great if you're having a hard time surrendering to something that you really don't really feel like you have control over. So it goes something like, Dear Divine Beloved, please change me into someone who can accept this, have compassion for myself, and surrender fully to your will. That's one example. You can also, if you're having a really hard time accepting how you feel emotionally, you can say, Dear Divine Beloved, please change me into someone who can really give myself the ultimate self-love during this situation. Please change me into someone who can respect my emotional state enough to give myself the space to feel what it is I need to feel in this moment. And the reason why I feel like prayer is such a good practice to protect your energy is because I feel like it tends to get a little bit underrated. I personally have called upon the divine whenever I was feeling immense amounts of stress, and I could feel myself relax a little bit more. For me, when I'm able to relax, I'm able to really allow my energy to kind of like recuperate, because it's not going in like 67 different directions whilst I'm stressing about whatever problem is currently going on, either in real life or in my head. So protecting where I am spending my attention, because where attention goes or intention goes, energy flows. The next suggestion I have is intentional boundary setting. So getting clear on what you will or will not accept. And this is, hang on. Oh, sorry. I just saw your comment, Melissa. So getting clear on what you will and will not handle in terms of intentional boundary setting. And this is important, and this is a really like big deal in terms of like practicing this in our lives as sensitive people, because we tend to sometimes be the emotional welcome mat for people. And we have to really be careful, especially now with everything going on, because at the time of this taping, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We have to really take care of how we are spending our time and energy and attention. When you start to intentionally create boundaries physically by like saying to someone, I really don't appreciate the way that you speak to me. This is how it makes me feel, and I would really appreciate it if you could make more of a conscious effort to not to speak to me in these types of ways, because I respond well to these types of ways. And if that doesn't work for you, then okay, I'm just going to have to limit my time around you, or I'm just going to have to walk away. And boundaries energetically on top of that, by like really stating your intention, like, okay, these are what my values are, these are what my morals are, this is what I stand for, and I'm drawing my line in the sand. So like if I ever come across someone who really just oversteps the line, or if I'm in a situation where it's like it's either like me and my values versus selling out, so to speak, of what it is that I hold near and dear, I am not going to cross that line. And really making that intention is going to profoundly save you a lot of stress, because you also develop this discipline of saying no, which is something we all need to learn. As sensitive people, we develop this discipline of saying no. It's not that we have to say no all the time, which is another class. um, when I personally experienced saying no, 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 no on a consistent basis, because I was not really trusting myself, and was really kind of like coddling myself in the process, it didn't give me room to grow. I basically shut out any new experiences because I was like, well, I'm too sensitive. Like, I can't do this. When you're doing intentional boundary setting, you have to be really careful about what is it that's going to help you to ultimately grow, what boundaries are healthy, and what boundaries are ultimately keeping you in place to keep you comfortable. Because if you are energetically sensitive, we were not born to have a comfortable, cushy life, so to speak, because we came here to learn more about ourselves. We came here to help the collective. And we also came here to learn, to experience, different, contrasting experiences. So when we do say no, it's rooted in confidence, and it's a stronger no. Like, no, like, I am not going to be moved from my values. No, I'm not going to be moved from my morals. No, I am going to stand for what I believe in. And I am also going to show the other person, the same respect, even if they might not show me respect, because for me, that's one of my values. You can disrespect me all you want, but if you really want me to snap, like, you have to push me to get to that point. I'm not going to snap first, ever. So following that, I really want to say this, and I would love to know what you think. That this idea that, your energy is a renewable resource. And as you continue to live through experiences and build your energetic resilience, which again is another class, your boundaries may shift and change, and that's okay. It's okay that things change. It's okay that your practices change as you continue to experience different levels of sensitivity. As we go throughout our lives, our sensitivity will shift and change, depending on where we are in life. I personally experienced about a year where I tried to shut everything off because I was really focused on building my professional career. And that did not help, nor did it work. So in the end, I realized that in my attempt to really just put my head down, like really hustle, grind, so that I could climb this like career ladder that I was trying to, get on and grow into, I took on a lot and I was not meditating. I wasn't doing any of these practices. I was saying yes to everything. I had this intense fear of missing out. I was probably only doing like tapping, like the EFT practice, but that was probably about it. And then after that year, I realized I was so exhausted all the time. And it was, obviously it was also because I was working two jobs, but I really wasn't taking care of myself physically so much in terms of resting and also energetically. I was not doing the self-care thing. And then when I went to my mentor, who's an energy healer, and I had her work on me, doing a session with me, she had to pull out a lot of stuff, which was a great big relief, but it also was not fun. So all this to say, please, please, please continue to take care of yourself. Whether you do these practices or you do your own practices, please remember to take care of yourself. And it's okay for, like I was saying, it's okay for things to shift and change. That's a part of life. And you can always go back to some of these practices that have worked for you in the past. I started shielding once I realized I was an empath, and then I would forget on a consistent basis and was like, oh, okay, I guess this is not for me anymore. So I stuck with prayer and I started practicing intentional boundary setting. And now where I'm at is my last suggestion, which is learning to let it flow. So when it comes to energy work, I feel like at times, and this is not everybody, at times it kind of seems like we are like, it kind of seems like there's a little bit of fear mongering involved. And I love my energy workers. I really love that energy work is starting to catch on and that spirituality is starting to be trendy. But I do think we have to acknowledge that there are times, depending on who you talk to, that there's a little bit of like fear marketing involved in there. So what do I mean by that? Fear in terms of, whether on social media, you'll see like tiles saying like, keep away people who like do not agree with you. Anyone who's like toxic, just like completely eradicate them from your life, which I agree with. But I do tend to think that there are some major generalizations happening where it's like anyone who doesn't agree with you or believe the same things as you or questions things that you believe in is automatically toxic. And I don't think that that's the case. And I think that we have to acknowledge that and learn how to listen to each other. In terms of letting it flow, where I'm currently at is really learning to allow what it is that is coming through me to just flow through me. Like, it's not mine. If it's not mine, I release it back. Or and if it is mine and it doesn't feel great, like I just let it flow. It's like being like an empty pipe, kind of, um, for my visual people. Don't watch the news. Yes, Melissa, thank you. Yes, that's a great way to protect your energy. I'm not gonna lie. I try to just like stay in the loop of stuff, but I try not to spend like, hours listening to news cycles just because it's too much. When I was shielding myself from a fear-based perspective, yeah, I definitely agree with you, Melissa. When I was shielding myself from a fear-based perspective, and what I mean by that is I was using these shielding practices because I was afraid of anything negative touching me. And I felt like I was so sensitive. I was so not resilient to like handle anything because I could barely handle anything when I was like this sensitive as a child. So, oh my God, I should like shield myself 24/7 and like that'll protect me 100%. no. Because even when I would do that, I never felt safe. As I continued to live through these different experiences I had and really come to terms with my anxiety, work through my anxiety, continuing to work with the angelic realm, because they also helped me um, just really clear out, extra anxiety that I was taking on, that I was empathing, that I had no idea I was empathing at the time, um, and letting it. And for me, I found that the best way for me to protect my energy was to practice letting it flow through me instead of attaching it to a particular experience, which is really hard. And I really want to be clear about this. I don't want what I'm saying to be misconstrued by saying like you should totally like basically disregard like any sense of like traumatic experiences you may have had, or allow abusive relationships or situations to just happen to you as a result of like this specific idea that I'm suggesting. In fact, I would recommend that you choose the opposite. So get out, girl. Like go. Like you do not have to stay in any like abusive or toxic cycle for you to become more spiritual, or you know uh to learn the lesson of the situation, which I am starting to kind of see that people are using that um to maybe stay in certain situations that are not so great. As one of my spiritual teachers has said, once you experience the abuse, that lesson is done. Like there is nothing else to learn. You do not have to stay in any kind of like abusive or toxic situation in order for you to understand what the lesson is spiritually. So in terms of letting it go and letting it flow, doing breath work, I find, is a really beautiful practice to start doing this, because it does help you get into your body, and it does help you to kind of break up the any like walls you may have put up around your heart to protect yourself from feeling any unwanted emotions. And the reason why I feel breath work is so powerful is because we really forget our connection to our bodies. Breath work is just this beautiful experience of allowing whatever it is that you've kind of been suppressing to just be, to come out. And it can be cathartic, a really cathartic experience. Like I have screamed, cried at my first breathwork class, and I was like, what is going on? But it is extremely powerful, and I really, really am grateful to um, the people who have brought that practice to the West, and who really were the first people to really teach that practice, because it is so powerful. Um, I also like to do EFT when it comes to allowing the energy to flow through me. For me, the most intense, I guess, absorption, I would say, as an empath for me is emotions. So I will literally tap on whatever it is that I'm feeling, and allowing that feeling to just take up space in me. And when I do that, it's kind of amazing at how much less space it takes up when I really give myself permission to say, okay, you know what? Like, all right, I'm really angry. Let's see how angry I am. All right, come up, like come forward. You can sit at this table in my heart. Go ahead. Like, what is it that you have to say? And then I'll literally tap on what it is that I'm angry, what the anger would like me to know, if that makes any sense. And it's really, really profound. So for me, where I'm at now is continuing to learn how to let it flow, and also to really just I will skip back and forth between these practices that I've suggested, and I'll also do what Melissa has suggested too, in terms of like practicing affirmations, meditation, really making sure that my mindset is in a really positive light, because all of that, it really does affect your energy levels. It really does. It really, really, really does. For me, what I've learned so far in terms of this idea of protection is that I've decided that nothing has the power to deplete my energy, because I absolutely refuse to demonize anything as right or wrong, as less than or more than. And that's really, really hard. It's really, really hard, because that means taking your power back, even in situations that are extremely stressful. Whether that's, for me, like going into debt, or starting a business, starting a business and like figuring it out from the ground up. These are all things that I have to really, be conscious of. And also, the self-care does not stop. If you're an empath, like, these are practices that really, really help you on the daily. I thought that I could, forego that, and the most I've ever been able to do that was for a year. And that is that's rare. That's rare, and also does not work. Does not work at all. So, do you have any questions, Melissa?
So I was wondering if you ever felt kind of held back from the past, and you kind of felt like the energy of, and I mean, I don't mean necessarily like past lives or ancestors or even like parents' trauma, which I mean, I could also see that being a part of it,
Mm-hmm.
but just like our own past, our childhood,
Mm-hmm.
and like, do you feel like doing forgiveness work around that um is part of like energy work, or has it been for you?
So, definitely. I when I was younger, I didn't realize it until I was older, but when I was younger, I was empathing everybody from my family. And I have a big family on my dad's side, who I was around like all the time. And that really, through no fault of their own, because they didn't know, no one gave them the tools, and I didn't know that I was sensitive. It really affected my relationship with my body, in the sense that I really had a hard time eating. And so part of the trauma that I experienced growing up was deciding to starve myself at the age of 8 for about 2 weeks. And it really like messed with my relationship with food for the longest time. When I started getting involved in the self-help world and the spiritual world, um, inner child work was one of the first things that I decided to do, because I realized I still had that trauma. I had to do a lot of forgiveness work, and the forgiveness work ultimately was energetic work for me. Um, and by that I mean not specifically like cord cutting at the time, because I didn't know, although it did ultimately lead to that. It was more so like really actively like sitting and doing like the Ho'oponopono prayer, going into meditation, visualizing myself as that 8-year-old, and like holding her and like saying that it's okay, like you didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like kind of might get a little bit teary-eyed, um, just because it was such a my childhood, while it was seemingly ideal emotionally and mentally, I did not enjoy it very much. And thank you. And I checked out a lot, and I didn't realize it until, I was older, and I realized, oh, I can't really remember much of my childhood. I guess that is probably a side effect of trauma. Yeah. So forgiveness work, I think, however, that shows up for you, whether that's writing it out, like I forgive myself for X, Y, and Z. I forgive my mother for X, Y, and Z. I forgive my father for. I would do that. I would like write forgiveness, like sentences for like days, because I was like, I knew I was like, I had to. I want to get this out of me. Like I want to like move past this trauma. Doing it from that space of like, okay, I want it to be over, like I want it to be finished already, um didn't help it did not help speed up the process. It did eventually lead me to learn that the more patient I was with that healing aspect of forgiveness, and that I'm probably not going to get it right the first time, because I still held a lot of resentment towards um uh I guess how I was raised at that time, even though I knew, logically that my parents had no idea what the hell they were doing and they were doing their best. I still had a lot of like anger and resentment. So I think all that to say is like, however you choose to deal with your past pain or past trauma, that journey is going to look different for you than it would for someone else. So for me, as I was doing forgiveness work, a lot of anger came up. And then I would start, I would start researching, how can I deal with anger? Okay, all right, I'll punch pillows. Okay, I'll take a towel and I'll hit it against the wall. Um, I'll what else did I do? I'll scream into a pillow. Like, I'll do anger visualizations. I did a lot. As much as I could like get my hands on that was free. I did a lot. And then as I was like dealing with that, sadness would come up. Then I would feel like my heart would open and I would feel love. And then I would go back into anger. And then I would feel, like just gratitude that I had the parents that I had, because they were great parents. They really are. Like, you know, my younger years, it was just a crazy time. But as I got older, they were really, really lovely people. And they really, really loved me and my brother. And they showed that throughout our entire life. So it's going to take a while. I don't know if there's like a specific, I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think there's a specific like right answer for um, when it comes to like healing the parts of your past that have caused pain, because it's going to look different for everybody. Yeah. Okay. So any more questions? I feel like it holds me back. Yeah, I totally hear you on that. I will say that just you being willing to acknowledge that, though, is the first step. It's kind of like, for me, it felt like this weird impenetrable wall of like trauma. Like I wasn't really sure how I was going to fully heal myself, but I listened to the teachers and the authors, and they were the only like ones that I had I, that I knew of that were talking about this kind of stuff in terms of like healing yourself and healing your life. So just acknowledging that, and then seeing like where you get taken to next, like where is it that your intuition is leading you next, can really, really help with that. Okay, so I'm going to close up this space. Thank you so much for joining me, and yeah, have a great day.